Now, let's define the best breads to get. Obviously, you want whole grain, you want possibly multi-grain, sprouted. These seem to be the breads that we should really be focused on, right? So,
Yeah,
but even with
yeah,
these breads, you do want to still pay attention, right, to how it's
right.
processed.
You got to watch how it's processed. So, whole grain, multi-grain, and sprouted and fermented. We'll talk about that a little bit later on because a lot of sourdough bread is fermented, which is also good for you. But whole grain, multi-grain, sprouted, but you can get tricked. Why don't you tell them how?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another Brewer Report. Today, we are talking about bread. And the question with bread, because it can be tricky, a lot of people love bread. We know this. In fact, I remember uh, listening to Oprah, who is often on a weight loss journey, and she often said bread was like her biggest issue because she just loves bread. So a lot of people do look at bread like it's a villain. You see people when they want to lose weight, they say, "Okay, I'm going to cut the carbs. I'm not going to eat any bread. I'm not going to eat any pasta. No bread." What's funny about that though is I remember when I was in high school. I know that's high school days, so your body's a lot different than when you get older. But to be honest with you, I ate a lot of bread. I was carb heavy, but I was also running 5 miles a day. So I don't know if that played a role, but I actually, in other words, I lost weight by eating carbs. I never looked at carbs as per se an enemy. But what we're going to learn today is how to choose the best breads. Uh, Carbs are fine, but you don't want too many carbs. There's a certain ratio you will want in terms of carbs to fiber, because fiber really is truly the key. But we will get to that. But before we get to that, Daddy, what do you think went wrong with bread here in America?
Well, basically, they process out all of the nutrients and, as you said, the fiber, etc. Bread has gone from a whole grain staple to a highly processed blood sugar bomb. Back when I was growing up, they had Marita bread, which was this buttery white bread, and it was basically refined. They stripped out all the fiber. Harvard basically said that white bread has the highest glycemic index of all foods. And I want that to sink in for a minute. That means that, that affects your blood sugar. So people who are eating white bread are basically affecting their blood sugar. And that's another reason why diabetes is so prevalent in our country.
Right. And I can't front. I love a good, some good white Wonder Bread, especially back in the day. But I guess what you're telling me is that white bread, in essence, is just empty calories, but people
Yeah.
do, they eat a grilled cheese sandwich, they eat a good fish sandwich with that white bread. Get some barbecue, get some white bread. But tragic
And
that
it's nice and
it's bad.
spongy and soft.
Right, right. Yeah,
So, so that was another selling point.
right. It's tragic that it's not good for you, but it is what it is. But I have to say, I do like some of the multi-grain breads and I personally like seedy breads. That's just me. Now, let's define the best breads to get. Obviously, you want whole grain, you want possibly multi-grain, sprouted. These seem to be the breads that we should really be focused on, right? So,
Yeah.
but even with
Yeah.
these breads, you do want to still pay attention, right, to how it's
Right.
processed.
Whole grain, multi-grain, and sprouted and fermented. We'll talk about that a little bit later on because a lot of sourdough bread is fermented, which is also good for you. But whole grain, multi-grain, sprouted, but you can get tricked. Why don't you tell them how?
Yeah, we're learning that it's cool. We get it. The supermarket is really just a huge billboard of food. Everyone is trying to sell you on their products. So, because of that, in many ways, the front label is, for those of you on the internet, it's almost like clickbait. It's like, hey, plant-based, or hey, multigrain, vegan, whole grain, these things all. And to be honest, some people are in a rush when they're shopping. They're like, oh, I see it, whole grain, pick it up and go. But the key is you really truly need to read the fine print, as we say, the labels. And you need to read the back to make sure you're really getting what it is that you need for your body. And one tip is you really want to make sure that whole grain, I believe, is what the first ingredient in the back when you look at the nutrition facts.
Yeah. But what you're really looking for, and this is something we're going to recommend that all of our viewers do, take some time. I did this with my neighbor here recently. Take some time when you got a little bit of time and you're in the grocery store and you're going down those middle aisles where all the foods and the canned foods and all that kind of stuff are, and the breads. Pick out, research the labels so that you can pick out the brands that you know will meet your standards for health, period. So if it's nothing else, read the labels. And let me just say this. One of the keys is fiber.
Yes.
Fiber, fiber, and more fiber. Okay? Um, Show that adding whole grains like whole grain breads and other foods to your diet will lower the risk of death from diseases like cancer and cardiovascular disease. In fact, the Whole Grain Council recommends 1 gram of fiber to 10 grams of carbohydrates. In other words, a 1 to 10 for all grain foods. And we're going to talk about some other grain foods after this podcast, but let's just stick with bread. Now, Dr. Greger has a higher standard. He says 5 to 1. In other words, 5 grams of carbohydrates to every 1 gram of fiber. That's a little hard to meet sometimes, to be honest with you, but there are breads that are very close to that. But if you just following the Whole Grain Council's recommendation of 1 to 10, you should be able to find enough breads out there that are healthy that meet that standard. But fiber, fiber, and more fiber.
Right. So definitely more fiber. In fact, I bought some bread. I don't know if y'all can see it. May not can see it too good, but this is the Ezekiel bread I got from not Whole Foods, Trader Joe's. It's organic. And when I look at the nutritional facts, because my dad's telling you about 10 to 1, but let's talk with them about how to calculate that. So when I'm looking at my current bread, see if I can even find a nutritional fact. See, this is why people don't even bother. Because sometimes you're like, where is it's all hidden. But
You
what
have to
I'm
turn it over
seeing,
and look at the
no,
profile.
I know, I'm looking at it. So you have total carbohydrates for this. I have the sesame Ezekiel. That's the green pack. So total carbohydrates is 15 grams. The dietary fiber is 3 grams for this. So the way you
That's
calculate
5
it
to 1.
is, yes, exactly 5 to 1. So the way you calculate it is 15 over 3 for all you struggling with math like myself. But but that's 5. So 15 over 3 divided by 3 is 5. Because
Right.
3
And I'm,
times
I'm
5
an
is 15.
Ezekiel flaxseed bread, which is 14 over 4, which is 3.5 to 1.
Right.
And so, as the
That's
research
even better.
shows, that when you have that much fiber, it's going to lower the glycemic index. Um, in other words, it lowers your blood sugar reaction. And as we've noted, our Hispanic brothers and sisters eat a lot of beans. And guess what? High in fiber. Acts like a
Right.
broom. It literally sweeps that saturated fat. It actually absorbs it and sugars and takes it out of your system.
Right.
We're gonna talk more
But
about when I on my cheat day what I do.
yes. But that's pretty much how you calculate that ratio. As my dad said, the council feels 10 to 1, but Gregor's even more strict with 5 to 1. The Ezekiel breads seem to meet Gregor's standard. Most other breads in the healthy category probably reach more the council's standard. I say just try to be, between those two. You may not be to the extreme as Gregor. I personally do like Ezekiel bread, however, but let's give them more of a list of breads that we recommend. Just a short list. We can't give you all the breads, but let's give a few breads. One that's pretty popular is Dave's Killer Bread. And I know there's a lot of
Yeah,
different Dave Killer Breads, but let's tell them which one.
I like Dave's Killer Bread, but it has to be the 21 multi-grain. That's the killer. As they say, that's the killer. Dave's Killer Bread, 21 whole grains and seed. You can get that at Walmart. It's right there at Walmart. It's not that expensive. It's 5.5 carbs to one fiber. So it's right there at the edge of Gregor's standards. Um, and then there's one in Whole Foods called Metzemacher, Mestemacher, Metzemarker, a maker. It's probably Mester Maker. I'm probably blowing that word up. And you can get the
It's an interesting
organic
word.
rye and you get the flaxseed. Now that one is really good. That's about 3 to 1. I mean, it's really good. And so in terms of carbs to fiber, um, but and then Stacey, you can tell them about Hero because a lot of New Yorkers like Hero.
Well, no, let's clear this up. There's a brand called Hero, but we're not
Right.
saying that Hero sandwiches are good for
Oh
you
no.
in terms of carbs because New Yorkers call heroes just how Philadelphians call sub sandwiches hoagies. New Yorkers call sub sandwiches heroes. So we're not talking about heroes in that sense. We're talking about a brand that's called Hero. So, Daddy, what were the
No, I was just saying that
nutritional
there is a
facts?
brand called Hero that has a net carb, and when we talk about net carbs, how they calculate net carbs is they subtract the amount of fiber from the carbohydrates, which is similar to the 5 to 1. And some Hero breads have a net carb of 0, which means they have just as much fiber as they do carbohydrates. And so they get a 0 net carb. And some of them as low as 2 and 3. In other words, they're even better than the 5 to 1 that Gregor even recommends. So I thought that was very interesting. But you have to go find the Hero bread. It's a brand, and you have to find it. But that's very interesting. Fermentation, sourdough bread with grains is a very healthy food. Uh, Fermentation helps break down the phytates, which can hinder the absorption of minerals like iron and zinc and calcium. This means your body has access to more of these minerals. Also has prebiotics, which helps with digestion, but it needs to be fermented, and it also has a lower glycemic index. Uh, and some other things you have to watch out for in regular bread. And we talk about this in our oils: palm oil and soybean oil. If you see that, run, because that's going to spike your cholesterol.
It- yeah.
Okay. So I guess what we're saying is go to the grocery store, spend some time, read the labels. You don't have to do this but about once or twice. Now you know basically the kinds of breads and foods that you want because you've done your homework. So do your
And the
homework.
brand that you can trust, the brand that you can
Right.
trust. But I do
Right.
need a
We
little
already know.
clarity. I do need a little clarity on the sourdough bread. So a lot of folks, especially online, who make recipes and make sandwiches, I've seen sourdough used a lot. So is the white sourdough bread good, or are you telling me it needs to be multigrain? Like which sourdough bread is
Well,
it?
you want sourdough with as much grain in it so you have as much fiber. But what
Okay,
what the nutritionists are saying though is that fermentation is huge as long as it's
okay,
fermented.
okay.
You got sourdough, and then you got which is non-fermented, and then you have sourdough that's fermented.
Oh, so
You
get
want
the
the
sourdough
fermented.
that's fermented. Okay.
Yes,
So I just want to be
that's the
clear
key.
on that. Okay.
Yeah, get the fermented sourdough.
Okay. Now, we mentioned some of the brands that you may can find at your grocery store. Uh, so my dad likes to eat fried fish occasionally.
Right, so
So why don't you explain to the people how you, I guess, in many ways can lessen the guilt of eating the fried fish
I'm just
through
keeping it
through
real.
the
Most
breads.
people are not going to be vegan. A lot of
Exactly.
people are not going to give up their fried whatever. Okay, chicken,
Exactly.
fish, whatever. But if
Right.
you lead with fiber, you mitigate
Mm-hmm.
the bad stuff that's going to happen when you eat saturated fat. In other words, you mitigate the amount of calories and the saturated fat that can get in and clog your arteries. So what I did was, this is my fried fish week. I bought me some Dave's killer bread, 21 grains, put that fish on there with some mustard and some onions and some hot sauce, and I had a great time. Okay. So, but
Yes.
I didn't feel bad because I knew I also ate a salad before that. I also knew that Dave's was going to help me. It was going to soak up a lot of that fried fish fat and push it right on out. And I'll be honest with you, I'm regular. I'm not going to get graphic, but within 2 hours it was gone.
Okay. Now, but now some folks may be laughing like, oh, okay, so I can eat this big plate of ribs as long as I have a big salad prior. I mean, you still want to do things in moderation because my dad, he eats fried fish, but he doesn't eat it every day. And he eats it maybe twice a month, if that. And even
Yeah,
when he
that's it.
does, it's maybe two, at most two pieces. So we're not saying go out here and have a whole large pizza as long as you have a salad prior that you're fine, or as long as you have it with a side of Dave's killer bread, you're good. We're not saying that. But for the most part, yes, just understand the science of fiber. Fiber is there to soak up that fat and sweep it out your body. So if you are going to have occasionally these fattening foods, that's how you should do it, correct?
That is true. That is true. But I'm
Because
just
look,
keeping it
I'm the
real.
type, I'll go ahead and give me a full plate of ribs right now. Just have me a salad prior. No,
I know, I know.
but no, go ahead.
The real key is we're just trying to teach you how to go through the labels and buy your bread. Okay. Point blank. Start with the carb to fiber ratio. Okay. 10 to 1 minimum. 10 carbs to 1 fiber minimum. Ideally, as close to 5 to 1 as you can get. Ideally. But and if you're going to eat, you can also eat fermented sourdough bread. And what we just found out with this Hero brand bread is literally, in some cases, 1 to 1, which is wow, or zero. Now that's even better. But fiber is king and queen. It basically lets you make mistakes like I do twice a month with my fish sandwich and correct the problem. In other
But
words,
like you said,
that fiber is going to grab that fat, soak it up, not all of it, but a large percentage of it, and sweep it right out your system.
so yeah, so and also keep in mind that if you've been following the show, the majority of your diet is heavy fiber because you're on that G bombs diet, hopefully. So having an occasional cheat day shouldn't ruin your body per se. And
Right,
again, you can
right,
even make
right.
it smarter even on your cheat day by still incorporating, as my dad said,
Yeah.
a good quality fiber food or grain, if you will. And
And that's
we
going to become even more important when we talk about other grain type foods later in some subsequent podcasts because we're going to still be following that whole grains council standard So we're going to talk more about that. But G-bombs, greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds, plus nuts is a life extending diet. Period. And so it extends to
Yes.
breads. It's those grains and seeds.
Yes. And so I think we've covered it for this part. Like my dad said, we'll talk more on other types of grains later, or even or kind of bread cousins, if you will. Like you have pasta, you have those wraps. A lot of people eat sandwiches with wraps. A lot of interesting data with wraps, I have to say. A lot of the wraps that you think are the most healthy are not quite so much. Again, it's that clickbait. Ooh, it has spinach in it. Okay. We'll see. You know, because people buy with their eyes sometimes too. But let's summarize a little bit of what we talked about today when it comes to traditional breads. So, bread is not necessarily the enemy. You just need to choose smarter, read the labels. Carb to fiber ratio needs to be at least 10 to 1, can even, or if you want to follow Gregor, 5 to 1. Low sugar and sodium. You want it to be organic, sprouted, fermented, if possible. You know, one of those, if you will, a whole grain. No preservatives or artificial ingredients. And again, we've said like maybe when you read the ingredients, maybe see if the first ingredient is whole grain, because I believe when they put ingredients in the back, I can't have to confirm this, but I think that it is listed based off of the amount of whatever that ingredient is in the food. So if whole grain is the first ingredient, that means that the food likely has mostly that. Apparently, that's what I've heard. I would have to check on that, but our literature is telling us to make sure it's the first ingredient when you read the label. Any other comments you want to make, Daddy?
No, it's just that this was very interesting research, to be honest with you. Um, Although, because we've been eating, I eat mainly Ezekiel flaxseed bread. I was good. But, everybody can't afford to go to the and it's not everywhere. And so you have to find breads that are more ubiquitous. And so Dave's Killer Bread, 21 whole grains, which is, everywhere, is a good one. Mesty Marker is in Whole Foods. And the Hero Bread, you have to go to that website to find out where they are. But that brand. But the bottom line is, it's the standards. Like as long as they follow the list that you just gave them, they can eat healthy bread. Give us our daily bread.
Yes. And for those of you who may have a gluten allergy, some of this may not apply for you, but Daddy, do you have anything further on that?
No, I'm just saying that the keto friendly bread is the Hero Bread.
Okay.
That seems to be the keto friendly. But you have to know your own body. Some people, like you said, can't eat bread, so that's fine. Uh, because really the key is the fiber anyway. As long as you're eating high fiber foods, you're gonna be okay.
So, Daddy, go ahead and close us off again with those powerful words.
The bottom line is this: bread is a staple for most people throughout the world and throughout time. So give us our daily bread.
And that's it. Amen.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Brewer Report. We truly care about your health and well being, and we're honored to be a part of your wellness journey. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share it. Until next time, stay informed, stay healthy, and take good care of yourself.